Hey, everybody, welcome to Act 3 on CHOY 101.7 FM. I am enjoying the fact that Christmas is around the corner and we get to be together and talk about some really great things on this fine Monday afternoon. I really appreciate it every time you tune in. So thanks for tuning in every day or every Monday at 1 o'clock, and also for following us on YouTube. If you're joining us from that platform, thanks for joining us as well. Today in the Zoom booth on Act 3, I have Sharon Bromley, and Sarah is from Hospice. She's got a whole bunch to tell us today. So once again, grab yourself a beverage, enjoy the program, and thanks for tuning in. Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It has that feel to it, right? It's the
It
beginning
does.
of the week, and we know that the weather's going to be changing over the next few weeks. And so we need to get prepared for, staying warm and toasty.
Yes.
Hospice has got some really great things going on at this time of year as well. So why don't we start letting our listeners know, first of all, what's, about hospice for people that don't
Yeah,
already know. Share that, and then
for
we'll go
sure.
from there.
Yeah. So Nanaimo Community Hospice Society is located here in central Vancouver Island, and we serve the Nanaimo population and greater Nanaimo as well. So any of the outskirts, and of course, we'll serve individuals that want to get out of their typical town or city as well if they feel more comfortable. We serve everyone from people who have lost a loved one to people who unfortunately know that they will be passing over and are looking for supports themselves. We work with toddlers, children, adults, youth, and seniors. So we kind of work with the full spectrum of people that have to deal with death, which, as we all know, we all have to deal with death at some point in our lives. So.
That's so true. I mean, none of us get to escape that, right? We're all going to face it or be faced with someone in our family or someone in our friend pool where there's going to be, a passing over. And so, but, I think what's really important about hospice that we forget is that hospice isn't just for the older adult. Hospice really has that full range. And I'm thinking about the kids, that there's a lot of children that require supports. What do your supports look like for younger people?
Yeah, so as mentioned, we serve toddlers, children, and youth, and there has been a significant increase of need for that age demographic. Unfortunately, traumatic loss has skyrocketed within our communities, not just here in Nanaimo, but we've definitely noticed it here in Nanaimo. So our supports are everything from offering group and individual counseling for, it's tailored towards that age group. So whether it's play therapy all the way through to one-on-one counseling, but then we also have what we call our OV, which is basically this giant motorhome.
Yes.
And we have, our trained therapists and counselors that go into the schools and they bring that, and it's a way for children to be able to access the services that they wouldn't typically be able to outside of the school time and the school hour. So we obviously work with each individual and make sure that we're serving the needs of them. So it is very, very individually tailored, but we do have a bit of a program overview for that age demographic.
Yeah, and the bus is such an exciting part because play
So,
therapy really can be fantastic. But you also have that in-house, right? Not just on the
yeah,
bus. You also
yeah,
actually
we
have that
do.
in-house, and a beautiful facility in Central Nanaimo for
Oh,
certain.
thank you. Yes.
Now, I'm curious just because I like to know the people that are working within different agencies, right? Sarah,
Yeah.
what brought you to hospice?
Well, most of my background is in the nonprofit world. I have over 18 years experience, and I actually knew a former executive director of the organization, and we were chatting, and she mentioned, did you know they're looking for someone in fundraising? And that's definitely my niche. That's passion, love. And I said I didn't. And I'll be honest, I've actually indirectly seen the impact that hospice has made. I've had a former loved one that's used the services, and the entire family saw a significant gain in the support factor through it. So
Yeah.
I knew how important it was for our community, and I thought, hey, I'll reach out, and here I am, almost a year later.
Wow. Well, we're glad that you're here with us today. I know that we've interviewed your executive director and many of the other team members from hospice over the years. And I'm always inspired. Like you, I had an experience myself with hospice. Back in 2022, I lost my mother and my sister in the same year. They were 8 months apart for each other. During the palliative period of my mother's passing, hospice was incredibly influential, very supportive. And what I'm shocked about, and I'm constantly admiring, is the volunteers. Can you talk a little bit about the volunteers? Because they really make hospice such an incredible organization, just in that alone.
I wish there was actually a word that I could use that would show or really highlight and explain the significance, because
Yeah.
I will completely agree with you that they are everything to us and for the
Yeah.
individuals that we serve. So we have volunteers, everything from an event volunteer all the way through to the palliative care volunteers, and they go through rigorous training.
Yes.
We have two cohorts twice a year, and we're actually seeing a demand that we might be upping that. But they go through weeks of training and reading, and they actually get some almost life lessons that most of our volunteers take with outside of hospice are
Yeah.
utilizing those within their own friend and family groups as well. So they're trained with other working professionals within the counseling and therapy world, and whether it's just them being there and holding the hand of someone who's passing, all the way through to supporting the family and helping them navigate whatever road that may be after, whether it's arrangements and supports, all the way through to a grieving mother, how do they support their other children or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it's so powerful, and I've seen a lot of volunteers throughout those 18 years, and the hospice volunteers are one of a kind.
They really are. It takes a special kind of person to sit with somebody who's passing over. It's a privilege to be with
I
somebody.
totally agree. I always say, if you get to be with someone in their last days, hours, weeks, whatever it may be,
Yeah,
it's an honor, because
it
not
really is.
everyone gets to.
No,
Yeah.
no, and there's a lot of people, especially in our community these days, that find themselves unfortunately isolated, that we don't know. For example, they don't have a lot of family nearby. Family lives in another province or on the mainland, can't access, the same way they would like to when a family member is going through some challenges, and ready to pass over. And some, I think that the mourning process is something that's under discussed as well, because I
I,
think it's so different for everybody, right? There's
yeah.
no cookie cutter. There's no cookie cutter way for people to mourn. So why don't we talk a little bit about what that looks like as it relates to hospice, and how people can be supported during that time?
Yeah, so like you said, it's different for everyone. And the thing is that not only is it different for everyone on how they mourn, I think each loss is different.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they compound on top of each other for an individual, and other times it's completely separate.
Yeah.
But I can't really, I to put into words what that's like is really difficult, because I've lost some individuals, but like you said about the isolation piece, I'm an only child, and then I have my
Yes.
parents here. So
Yeah.
the idea of hospice already totally relates to what my life may be like at a later point when my parents pass, because I'll have so much to deal with, and that's what they're here for. So
Yeah.
the one nice thing with hospice is, like I mentioned, we have all those different types of programs. So if the group counseling isn't one for you, maybe the individual is, or maybe it's the one-on-one therapy, or finding something else outside of hospice, because we also help individuals navigate programs that are outside of what we provide as well. But the one thing is that all of our services and programs are free. So between
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
fundraising and the 25 roughly percent that we get with government funding, everything's free. So it's incredibly accessible for everyone,
Yes.
because it is free. And unfortunately, that's not a word that we hear very often anymore.
Well, especially when it comes to counseling, because the level of professionalism that goes with each of the volunteers that go through the counseling process and learn, really, how to how to be present, how to sit back and listen. And there's a difference between listening and actively listening, where you're holding space for another person,
Yeah.
and they are properly trained on how to do that.
Yeah.
Hospice also does a lot of fundraising. And I know that we had your executive director on for a while. Paige was fantastic. And she was telling us about the big house project that was going on, right? And we did a big, push and discussion around that. But I'm to understand you guys are evolving. So there's some new things that are up and coming within hospice. How about you share what's going on?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we had the home lotto, which was a huge endeavor for our organization to take
Massive.
on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that forward thinking, that is something different for Nanaimo, because we have those opportunities to buy and purchase tickets, but they're never typically for something here locally in Nanaimo. I
Absolutely.
think that board and staff that really supported that initiative, because I've never actually I wasn't part of it. I got to see I basically ended up becoming a new staff member shortly before they announced the winner. So I got to see the really, really cool part about that. And it's a young family here in Nanaimo. But we're really getting into more intense fundraising, because of course there is the uptake for our programs.
Yes.
And we want to continue keep providing them for free. We want to continue going into schools, and sadly, again, that traumatic loss component. So we do have some fundraising that happens throughout the year. So we have a program called CULT, and it's COLT, and it's the Cycle of Life tour. And we have it's the basically third-party fundraising, and we have a bunch of individuals that compete with other hospices up and down the island, and they cycle all the way around Salt Spring Island. And that
Oh,
every
wonderful.
late spring, summer.
Yeah.
And they do everything from bottle drives to to car washes and raffles and everything like that. And then we also have our hike for hospice, which happens every year. And this coming year in 2023, Westwood Lake again. But I can't give out all the details, but we have something massive planned. We have a big stage coming. We will have multiple activities for the whole family. So maybe you're not able to hike, run, or walk around Westwood Lake. There'll be something for you and a way to participate and be engaged with our volunteers and staff. And then of course, we're right around the corner from Christmas. It's the last, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's the last Monday of November right now, which means we're about to hit the ground running into our Christmas campaign. We have a significant goal of $100,000. So the reason why we have such a significant goal is our funding is down this year. And we anticipate that's probably going to go into 2023, just with the way the economy is. But we need roughly around $100,000 to be able to hire another counselor that we're able to make sure is fully trained and has all the tools they need, so that they can provide more supports for all of our clients. But as mentioned, we're really seeing that uptake with children. So it's the Celebrate a Life. So CAL, as we call it internally. And we will have volunteers and some of our staff out throughout the community selling our Christmas angels. We have memory tags for our Christmas trees. I will be hitting the ground running at businesses and individuals' homes. There's ways to donate on our website. And, I guarantee there's a way to be able to support hospice, whether it's your time, maybe it's donating some type of in-kind donation. We never say no to money.
Of course.
A monetary donation goes a long way. But we're really looking at being able to end the year on a high and have a bit of a buffer, and be able to know that we'll be able to support those children, those individuals within our community well into next year. So
yeah. People don't realize just how much it costs to run an organization of this magnitude. There's a lot of hidden costs. There's a lot of just keep the lights on kind of costs that you need to have. these talented people, it's not like they're getting huge salaries for this work.
No.
It's a labor of love for most
Yeah.
people, and certainly for the volunteers that come on board that are well trained. But along with that, it's getting harder and harder for organizations to reach into community, get that funding, especially as the economy is the way it is. I love that there's some innovative ideas that have come down the pike, though. I'm really
Yeah.
delighted about
Yeah.
that, and I know our
They're-
community is going to have a marvelous time.
yeah.
We're at the part of the program where it makes sense actually to get people to go get a piece of paper and a pen. So
Yeah.
hang on for 1 second and we'll
Yeah.
do a bit of station identification as well as, you know.
Yes.
So folks, if you have just tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM, thank you. We love it that you tune in all the time. Thank you so much for doing that. And please, please keep us on your dial at CHLY 101.7 FM. Speaking of fundraisers, as much as we want to fundraise in the community, CHLY 101.7 FM also needs a couple of dollars to keep our lights on. We really appreciate it. And you know, for as little as $5 a month, $5 a month, that's it, $5 a month, you can help us keep these programs, not just Act 3, but the many programs that we have available on air. It's a very simple process. All you need to do is go to www.chly101.7fm, donate, and we will happily, appreciatively take your donation. So please do that if you can today. As far as it goes for the rest of the fundraisers and things that are going on communities, CHLY also tells you about these kinds of initiatives. Today, we're talking specifically with Hospice. Now is a great time to go get a piece of paper and a pen so you can figure out how you can support Hospice, or on the other hand, get the services, get the help that you need during this time. A lot of people don't realize that Christmas time for some families is the hardest time for people that have lost loved ones. And so when we come back with Sharon Bromley from Hospice today, I want to actually dive right in and talk about just some of those very specific areas of grieving. Thanks again, Sarah, for being here. I'm delighted that you're here. I love having Hospice on the program. It always makes me happy. It really does. So just in a few minutes, we'll get you to give that information out. People are
Yeah.
probably still grabbing their pen and paper. And if they're driving, fortunately, they've pulled over to the side of the road to grab their stuff so we can have this conversation. Um, you know, for a lot of people in the break, I sort of mentioned about the grieving at Christmas time. It's a very tough period for some. To be fully transparent, it's also a very difficult time for me. My grandmother, every year, from the time I was probably, I would say 9 or 10 years old, until I was maybe 13 or 14, my grandmother would have a stroke at the table almost every year. So we had always had the fire department at my house, the inhalator squad taking my grandmother away. The good news is she actually survived with few leftover ramifications, but she eventually did succumb in when she was about 73 years old. Uh, yeah, very, very young, super young. And so, you know, as a child watching my grandmother, you know, basically, and it sounds terrible, but she would like plop into the food. Like she would, her face, she would be fine 1 minute, or she'd be walking down the hall and she would take the fall, or something would, it was always on Christmas Day around Christmas supper, as I remember. And as a child, I was traumatized by that. I was always afraid grandma was coming over, so something's going to happen. And we did have hospice back then, but not to the caliber we have it now. You know, how do people deal with that morning time at Christmas? What have you seen, and what does hospice do during Christmas time? Do you see the uptick then as well?
You know what? It's often right before and right after. I think people are either incredibly aware of how hard it is and are taking that proactive approach in the fact of whether it's signing up their children or themselves or another family member, or at least looking at what options that they have for those
Yeah,
supports.
absolutely.
And then usually there's a little bit of a lull right around just before Christmas, because I think everyone kind of gets caught up in the moment.
Of course.
And then after there's that loss, or there's that that person missing at Christmas, whether they're from sitting around the table or they're usually the one that hosts dinner or whatever it may be. And then the one thing is that unfortunately, even though the holidays is what brings everyone together and is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
also the time that we lose a lot of people.
Indeed.
So the stresses, that can be easily one, all the way through to people just feeling incredibly isolated, incredibly lonely, and
Yes.
it's so sad to say it, but it really does almost come hand in hand with the holidays, and that's what hospice is here for. Because in an economy that we're moving into, and unfortunately quite quickly, people are stressed even more about the roof over their head, the food on their
Absolutely.
table,
Yeah.
and we have some amazing supports here in Nanaimo to help those people, but unfortunately it's still a stress for hundreds, if not thousands of people. So hospice is here for everyone. And if we can't help you, or we're not the right fit for you, we have a significant amount of other resources where we can direct and support the individuals to get those other supports here in our community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, it's the firsts, right? The first holiday that someone has passed away, that they're not at the table. The first season, whether it's the spring or, any other, where family is supposed to come together, if you follow me. I'm haven't quite got all my words in space just for whatever, but the way I see it is that I've witnessed here in this community through working with nonprofit agencies, where people feel quite lost, and they're often too shy to ask for the help. What would you say to those people that are afraid to make the call? Like, for example, what would happen? Let's say I phone hospice. What could I expect?
Well, the one thing is that we very much treat it, obviously, our logo for our organization is a heart, and we treat every individual, volunteer, donor, or even a client, with the utmost love and support. But what I can say is, at the same time, we're still a service. So if it is different when you're going to an organization, and a lot of people have a hard time, whether it's the first time to the food bank, or the first time asking for a ride, or whatever it may be. But the one nice thing is when you phone hospice, is we also treat you with that dignity and respect, that you're able to feel like you're actually just booking a therapy or counseling appointment like you would anywhere else. And the only difference is there isn't the exchange of money at the very end of it. You're not receiving this invoice in your email after. You're just able to go get the support, go get the love, the acknowledgement, the space, as you put it, which is a great way to explain it. Leave, move on with your day, however you see it, and still have another appointment coming up to get that time again, and that space for somebody to listen or support or hold or whatever it may be. So it is very much like like you are booking it with any other facility per se, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, I can easily say it is one of the, it's funny because my personality is quite outgoing and everything. And as soon as I step into the office, which is hospice, there's this calm.
Absolutely.
It's very much this little sanctuary. And it's interesting because I didn't realize how many of my own personal friends and family members had actually used services from hospice. And since I started working there, we've discussed it, and it's a community. And I think they've all found connection, whether it's the same type of loss or a different loss, with other individuals. So whether they've started volunteering together, or they've been in group counseling, or just seen each other while waiting for a individual therapy appointment. So it's just such an amazing place. And I just don't think people will fully understand until they have the experience of either volunteering or accessing our programs.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've been inside the hospice building. It's been very graciously offered up to me to do filming in there when we do the Act 3 television program. We have already filmed in there, so you can find that as well on some of our previous episodes. It's a calming and it's a beautiful space. It's you walk in and especially if you're a little bit nervous about having a kind of a counseling session as such, it's not stressful at all. It really is a peaceful place and a safe place to fall.
Yeah.
This is a great time to tell people, we've already told them to go get paper and pen. So hopefully they're ready with their pointed sticks or their pens right there ready for the information. So how about you share with us, how do people get to you?
So we, of course, will gladly accept people to come into our office. We will never turn anyone away to be able to view the space as long as we don't have sessions going on within specific rooms. But they're welcome to come down and see what we are all about. And we're just off town site area there. So we're very central and we're also on a bus loop. But one of the easiest ways is just to go online. To nanaimohospice.com. And there's multiple different ways under our donate component, whether it's monthly donations, one individual donation. We look at planned giving and all the way through to donate a car. So we have multiple ways to give back. We also have our thrift store, which is located on Bowen Road. It's in the plaza where we have Regard Coffee, and I think there's a Subway, and I'm sure where people kind of recognize where that is, just up from Country Grocer. And they're, if they donate there, whether it's some of their clothing, all the way through to they're welcome to drop off donation checks there. We're on social media, and then throughout the holiday season, we're actually at Nanaimo Northtown Center starting this coming weekend. So on December 3rd and 4th into the following week. And then the week after that, we're actually at Woodgrove Center. So there's multiple ways to come down, chat with our volunteers. I'll be there sometimes as well. Quiz us, ask us questions, find out ways to get involved. There's lots of ways to donate. So
I'm loving that you're also talking about volunteering, right? I'm loving that, that you're looking. Is there another cohort coming up for training? Like you said that
that'll be coming up this spring. So we gladly accept our event volunteers. There will be some 101 for hospice training, but it isn't that full cohort, multiple week training. Of course. And then this coming spring, we have the actual cohort where there's that application process and things like that. But we have Bonnie, who is our volunteer coordinator, and she is unbelievable. She's actually worked with a hospice over in Alberta before. So she has this great background and knowledge of hospice to begin with. And now it's just in the community. So the thing is that the gift of time is also incredibly important. And, speaking about life and then death, time is obviously incredibly important. So it is. I never want to sway away from how important that piece is as well.
Yeah, time and money for sure are so essential in order to make this program work. But as you said, it's not just about the dollars and cents of it all. However, we do need the Keep Your Lights On funds for sure. Yes. I want to talk a little bit more about the gift shop, if you will, because I think a lot of people over COVID were concerned about donating. So many of the secondhand stores were not taking donations. Have you begun that again? And tell us what that might look like. Okay.
Yeah, so that was we noticed obviously a significant drop in funding, because that is our social enterprise that helps keep our lights on per se.
Absolutely.
But the thing is that we do have it open now. So we have the store itself, but then right next to it, which is attached, is where you can drop items off. And we have some unbelievable volunteers and staff who go through everything, make sure everything is in working order, is clean, is not broken. They actually just they closed for a couple days to revamp and clean and organize, because it's so busy. The amount of donations that we get in every day, let alone how many people are coming through the door. So we're closed on Sundays and Mondays, but we are open Tuesday to Saturday. And the amount of things that I've already purchased,
I know, me too.
Donated.
You know what? I will not. I'm a savvy secondhand shopper. That is my thing. And I always find great stuff at hospice, and
Yeah.
especially at this time of year, because
Yes.
people will often donate some of their beloved Christmas decorations that maybe their
Yeah.
mom had. Like that in my mother was, she's gone now, as I mentioned before, she passed in 2002. But my mother had enough Christmas decorations when she passed away to seriously, I'm not kidding you. She could like fully furnish 3 apartment complex lobbies
Yeah.
with the amount of stuff that she had. So a lot of people are like my mother in that they just gather these things up.
Yeah.
And I have also become, accidentally a lot like my mother in gathering that, because you find such wonderful things in the secondhand
Totally.
shops that are older ornaments or unique ornaments. And
Yeah.
yeah,
They've got a story, right?
they've got a
Yeah. No,
story.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
And
amazing.
frankly, they just don't make stuff like that anymore.
They don't. No, they
Right?
don't.
It's just the quality is just not there. So it's great to be able to go and sort of hunt. And it's part of the hunt of finding the bargain too, right?
Totally.
Hospice,
Yeah.
the prices are so fair. They're very fair.
Incredibly fair. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and beyond fair, like they're cheap. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's really
Yeah.
it's a great way to find. In my family now, we have a little bit of a tradition, and that is that we no longer, in one segment of my family, we no longer buy brand new gifts for our friends. The deal is they have to go and get them from a secondhand shop.
Love it.
That's the
Love it.
deal. They have to. There's
And
no,
likely there's a lot of thrift stores out there that do a give back in some capacity, whether they're directly
absolutely.
run by a nonprofit or they're donating funds to and everything. So it's an extra give back, and it's one less thing in the landfill as well. So
And it's one
it's a
less thing in
full
the
circle
landfill.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So
I do
people,
encourage everybody to take that, kind of on just for the fun of it all, to sort of, really, and to support hospice and other organizations that also use this forum as a way of keeping the lights on through social enterprise.
yeah.
So I'm curious, what's your favorite part about this time of year?
Oof. You know what? This time of year, on a professional side, I love
Yeah.
that end of year push. I love typically the end of year campaigns, and just that kind of high stress. But when it actually comes to this time of year, on a personal level, it's the love, support,
Yeah.
the connection with community, just the give back.
Yeah.
And I can easily say when it comes to hospice, it kind of ticks all the boxes, which is really, really
Exactly.
amazing. Not all jobs, which I don't feel like I really have a job. It's
I
something
know
that's
what
a
you mean.
passion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just amazing to see whether it's our volunteers giving that extra time and support to people who've lost someone,
Yeah.
or it's the donor who said, like, how can I make this happen for you to hit your goal? Or it's the staff member that is just so overwhelmed with joy because they can see all the pieces coming together, or that child is starting to feel some ease in their heart and mind because they've been able to start accessing our services and programs. And it's literally just everything.
Yeah.
It's so
I
cliche,
know.
but it
Well,
really
I
is.
can feel you glowing. Like, if for
Yeah.
people, for the radio, they can't actually see you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can. But
Yeah.
there is the glow that comes when you're talking about hospice, and
Yeah.
I so much admire that, because I think that truly, when you're doing what you love, you're not
Yeah.
working a day in your life,
No.
regardless of whether you get a paycheck or not. You are not,
Totally.
you're doing something that actually is impactful and meaningful.
Yeah.
I'm curious about people, we've talked a little bit about people calling the services, and when they call, what they can expect.
Yeah.
Some agencies have time limits, though, for how many days or how many sessions that a person can access the service. Is there such a thing for hospice?
No. Like as we mentioned earlier, everyone
Yeah,
grieves differently.
of course.
Everyone has access within their day-to-day life, and
Yeah,
how much time they can actually provide
yeah,
to being able to access the programs themselves.
of
So
course.
we of course have rules of thumb which come with industry standards and things like that. But as mentioned, everything's tailored to each individual. So
Of
if
course.
whether it's the 7-year-old who's lost a sibling, to whether it's an overdose or suicide or whatever it may be, or a parent, all the way through to the individual that's lost their grandmother grandparent, everyone's connection with their loved ones is different. So we tailor it to each person. But we believe that there is like a certain guidance. But the one nice thing is too, is that there's so many different types of support, and the journey can change, that there's different ways of supporting our clients throughout the year, throughout multiple years, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And a lot
And I
of
think
our sorry.
I was just going to say, I suspect as well that a lot of people, once they finish their process, right, once they've come through, because you never really get over the loss of somebody, you move through it, right? It's a very fluid
Yeah.
motion. But I would imagine that many decide to give back at this time of year as well.
So funny that
Yeah, go ahead.
that's
Sharon.
exactly what I was about to say. This summer we were doing this fundraiser, and I'd asked two of my friends to come out and support, and I knew that they'd both lost their sons, completely different reasons and everything. I didn't put together that it was the same timeline, and they hadn't seen each other since group counseling. And then all of a sudden we saw each other, and the impact and the power and the emotion behind that, it was just unbelievable. And they've reconnected, and they're staying connected. And it's things like that are more powerful than anything I can ever explain or put on a piece of marketing materials or
Understood.
on our website. But
Yeah.
It's literally creates a community and a support outside of. And both of them they've supported hospice in other ways, but they haven't been really, really hands-on because they weren't ready yet. But then they both said right around the same time, I'm ready to give back more of my time and be around that. And then they all of a sudden made this something that was larger than all of us, and that different emotion and that different connection. And we see a lot of our volunteers because they get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they've lived it, they've experienced the programs, they've been there.
Yeah. And there's something to be said with that shared lived experience. So you're not going to be talking to somebody who hasn't probably gone through it themselves at one level or another. You may find that the circumstances behind the death is different, but the impact on the family is universal. We
Totally.
feel the loss. I remember years ago, Kubler-Ross, I forgot her first name, but Kubler-Ross was sort of the go-to for the steps of grieving and what that looks like. And, we're not in a position right now to do a tutorial on what that all might look like, but there are a number of steps within grieving in itself that we all go through. And so I'm curious, just from the rudiment side of things, have you seen changes in the way that the professionals and the counselors are seeing death and dying is compared to the way it was even 10 years ago or 15 years ago? Is there, like in most organizations, in most things in life, we're seeing changes, right? I mean,
there's always an evolution.
There's an evolution, right? So what might that look like now for people, just to kind of, if they're not quite ready to make the call yet, is there a way that we can help support people that are through death and dying now?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to kind of not to sound like that broken record, but almost that reiteration of everything's so tailored to the individual.
Yeah.
It is about them and their story and their loss and their emotion.
Yeah.
It's not about this is what the textbook says, and this
That's
is how
right.
we're going to support you or treat you, or it's that hold space and you tell us what you need.
Yeah.
You tell us how you feel. And I think that by no means do we not offer, ideas or supports or, the navigating whatever the system or whatever it may be. But it's as we've seen with a lot of, therapy or programs nowadays, it's less about what the book says, and it's more about the individual.
Yeah.
That the textbooks have helped guide us to where we are, but
of course,
it's a lot more personable. And I think we've always kind of been ahead of the curve from everything I've ever seen, heard, or
Very
experienced
true.
myself with hospice. We've always kind of been ahead of that, but it's just to a different level and extent now. And we really believe in, the yeah, the hold space. I think that you really, that's the best way to put it.
I find for many people, they don't understand what's happening to them in the grief process. Some people wish to just set it aside as though it doesn't exist. Other people get very lost in certain aspects, or they become very angry about the loss. Others are resolved in the fact, well, it was time. There was an age when that expiry date on the bottom
Yeah.
of the shoe kind of
Suffering, whatever it
says.
may be. Yeah.
Right. So I think that it's really important through this forum, through on this radio show as well, to sort of let people know that wherever you are, it's okay.
Totally. Totally.
Right. Like wherever you are.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's quite often you work through every single one of those emotions, or sometimes you almost within an hour or a day, you could feel every single one of those emotions. You
Absolutely.
feel cheated that you didn't have enough time, or you feel angry that they're gone, or the circumstances, or you feel like you've taken ownership,
Yes.
or whatever it may be. And it's very much a human thing. We're allowed to feel those things, and our staff by no means would ever sway anyone from saying that's not how it is, or you shouldn't feel
No,
that
no, no,
way.
exactly.
They just
Yeah.
help and hold that to be able to help them work through having just a peace, or
Yeah.
a softness. Yeah, that it's okay no matter what emotion.
I'm really I'm beyond delighted to know that is the way that it's done, because I feel that people don't want to be told how to grieve. They need to be heard, right?
Yeah.
And the good news about hospice is that's exactly how it is. And I have personally experienced hospice on 2 occasions, and I'm grateful for those experiences. Not here in Nanaimo, no, but I know that hospice provincially, Canada-wide, throughout the United States as well, wherever you go and there's a hospice, you're going to get an experience to help
Yeah.
support you through grief. And it's okay to grieve. The former executive director and I became very good friends over time. And one of the things that she said to me, and one of the interviews we had on Shaw, was she said, you have to be able to say the word died. She died, right? A lot of people, I still use it. I still say that people pass over. For some situations, I have a difficult time actually saying that the person died. There's a grounding that comes with that, though, for some people, right?
Mhm.
There's a real grounding of being okay with the fact that someone has died. In your experience, and of course, I don't want to, throw you under the bus or anything like that, but have you seen how vocabulary can impact some of the people that you've
Mhm.
worked with over time? And
Yeah.
what does that maybe, have you, like, what do you see? I'm just curious. How does that feel for you as the volunteer, as the employee of hospice, and you get shaken with the vocabulary? What does that feel like for you?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because with the fact that my role is more that like fundraising and marketing piece,
Yeah.
I do get the opportunity to see some of our clients, or of course, as mentioned, family friends that have experienced our programs and services, and I had no idea, or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. But I think it comes down to the stages when things are
Yes.
incredibly raw, when things, when a loved one has passed or died. I think that that's where we see all of our, whether it's our trained volunteers, our therapists and counselors, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I think it's once again that individual. Where are
Yes.
they at within that grieving process? What can they handle? What will make this, you know, um, help them with that moving through those emotions. It is interesting. And then of course, working with an adult versus a child, and the approach
Absolutely.
and the terminology, is completely different as well. And once again, we tailor that
Yeah.
to each person and group and individual. And it's about just making sure that they feel heard, making sure that they feel supported,
Yeah.
and that they have space if they don't typically within their day to day,
Mhm.
and that they have
Yeah.
somewhere that they can go, or that they can learn. Like we have a lot of parents that come in and they're working through their own grief, but then they're also looking for the supports and the guidance on how they can provide that for their children, because maybe
Exactly.
their child isn't ready to see someone, or maybe the parent doesn't feel that they are, or they almost need that prep themselves before they bring their child to hospice. So we're it's yeah, the terminology, but I think there is the when is it appropriate, and that's what
Exactly.
all the training goes
Yeah.
comes hand in hand with everything that we do.
And I love how you worded that too, because for some parents, right, it is that they're grieving themselves. And so they want to ensure that their child is also going through their process, and they want, to mitigate that and to help them. But
Yeah,
what does that timeline look like? And it's going to be different for everybody, right?
every family. Yeah.
Yeah, every family is different. As much as we're so similar in so many ways, we are all very much individuals without a doubt, right? And that's the key of hospice. I am curious, do you go into the homes for people now, or are you do you visit people with technology now through Zoom for them, or do people really need to come into the office in order to get support?
It's actually brilliant that you asked that. I feel like it's not very often you can say that you're kind of almost ahead of the curve, especially in the tech sector.
Sure, sure.
Hospice actually offered a lot of our programs and services via Zoom, just like we are today, prior to COVID. And then what has happened is it's just made us that much more flexible, and just that much more like knowing how to navigate that component, because I think we're starting to get into a place where this feels a lot more normal.
Yeah.
But originally it didn't for a lot of people. So we do have our in-person group counseling. We do have individual counseling, which is hands-on. We are going into the schools, and then we're also in people's homes via Zoom as well. So we kind of do the full spectrum, and it depends on the comfort level of the individual. We still have hand sanitizer and masks at the office, and we're just kind of, as the whole world does, adapting, pivoting, and changing where needed.
Yes. Yes. And we've all done that. And I think that, personally, I think that Zoom has become quite a great thing. I used to go in the studio every Monday, and sometimes it was hard to bring guests into the studio simply because it's the middle of the day, right? For many,
Yeah.
even the travel time is a lot. And I think so many organizations now have really created an ability to have the word I'm looking for
It's
is
almost hybrid.
hybrid.
Work.
It's
Yeah.
exactly the word I'm looking for. And there's no better way to meet people than where they're at, right? So if
Yeah.
Zoom is a way that makes sense, then it's a great way to actually talk with a counselor as well. I'm so glad that you guys do that.
I'm the one interesting thing is I'm fortunate I didn't lose a loved one during the last couple of years, but I do see a counselor, and there was a different comfort level of being, I can curl up in my own bed with my computer.
Exactly.
And it's not this strange room or whatever it may be. So there was a different level of it. I now go into the office and everything, and see that individual, but there was something very comforting about being in my own space. And
Yeah.
and I think that for a lot of people, it's nice as almost the icebreaker to start that way as well. So
Yeah, I think it's a really brilliant way to do it. I really do. And I do think that a lot of people are more open to trying it this way first, especially if they're taking baby steps.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than the plunge of going straight to the office right off the top, right? This is it's a nice and gentle way for people to work together.
And some people just don't have the means. So whether it's they're taking their lunch break for the the appointment, or maybe they don't have the physical means and they don't have a vehicle. And as mentioned, we're still on that bus route, but there's always there can be a logistical challenge. So we're very, very flexible on how majority of our programs are run as well.
And the volunteers likewise have that flexibility too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine for the training, is the training all done in-house, or
Yeah, we were doing a hybrid model, but now, and I do believe, I'm not sure how the spring cohort, I guess we'll wait to see what happens in the world. But we were doing a lot more in person, but we have a very large space. We have actually this great room where we can have our speakers, and it's comfortable and it's cozy, and there's a relaxed component with the training, even though it can be quite intense with the topics and everything as well. So
I've been through counseling training, and I have to tell you, some of the most important pieces behind that for me were the ability to be present with other people going through similar things. There's such a learning that goes with just even in the training process, and then taking that training out into the universe is a beautiful gift to our society. And for some people, they volunteer for a number of years. For some people, it's only a short period of time, but we do hope that people will take the time to really explore this as a way to give back in community, especially if you have lived experience. Without a doubt, there's something to be said for having that lived experience to really, as we've coined the phrase and we're using it today, of holding that space, right? And making sure that on both sides of the aisle.
Totally. We actually, there was a volunteer that I met with a few months back, and she'd lost her son. And her and her husband were looking at a way to give back. And she went through the training a few years after she lost her son, because she had her own time that she had to work through her own space to be able to provide space for someone else. And she volunteers at the hospital in palliative care. And there was this one gentleman, she told me, that the nurses had told her he doesn't want to see anyone. He doesn't want anybody there. He just wants to be alone. And she had ended up going in there to get him a new glass of water or something. And he, it was very, very quick, and he didn't really want to talk to her or anything. And one day she went in there, and he wasn't really giving any indication that she was even there. And she just went up to him and held his hand for a quick second. And as soon as she did that, he held it back and squeezed. And I mean, squeezed, and wouldn't let it go. And she sat with him for a couple hours, went and got him a glass of water, came back, and he had passed.
Wow.
And he just he finally knew he just needed someone.
Yeah.
And it was literally as simple as her not saying a single word and just holding his hand. And he held, apparently he just held so tight and didn't want to let go.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to pass alone. And that was a proof of that story, and the power of just having someone there, and the power of hospice. So and that's just one of so many stories that I have in my short period of time being with hospice. So, with how much death happens in the world for each individual, whether it's super direct or indirect, it impacts us all. So. Yeah.
I'm speechless because I resonate with that so well.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of being that person that has gotten to hold the hand. And so I understand really deeply how impactful that is.
Yeah.
If you have just tuned in, you're hearing the last parts of today's episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. My guest today has been Sharon Bromley from Hospice. We are delighted that she has been in the Zoom booth with us today. And we are going to ask you to do a call to action if you're listening to us right now. Our prayer is that you will be so kind to find Hospice, and she's going to tell us in a moment how you can reach us, or how you can reach Hospice. There's something to be said about giving to people that just need a little bit of space. They just need to be heard. And whether you do it in a financial way, or whether you do it in a volunteer way, the time that you will spend with Hospice will be more than enriching. So we encourage you to please consider them on your Christmas list this year. Sarah, once again, how do people get a hold of you and Hospice?
Yes. So I work at Hospice along with many amazing individuals that will pick up the phone, answer your questions, or if we don't have the answer, we will definitely find it for you. We
Absolutely.
have a website at nanaimohospice.com where there is information on how to get involved, how to donate, the programs and services we offer. If you want to speak with somebody, a lovely woman by the name of Debbie is usually who picks up the phone. She runs our front desk, and
Thank you, Debbie.
yes, and she will help guide your call, explain services, or even find a way to be able to accept a donation. We have Bonnie, who will take your gift of time and set you up with volunteer training or a shift, or give you information on how to get involved when you're ready. And I'm here to help run fundraisers, engage with you if you want to participate in a third-party fundraiser, speak about in-kind donations. Planned giving and estate planning is a significant piece of what we're looking into and helping us get to our fundraising goal. And it is the end of year push, and we're hoping to raise $100,000 to be able to hire another counselor so we can support all of those individuals, and especially our young children and youth.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We're at, the part of my program that I love the most, right? And that is the wisdom piece, right? If you were to imbibe one piece of wisdom, or maybe two or three, it's up to you. If you're able to imbibe some wisdom into your experiences with hospice and all that you do within community, what might that look like for you?
Ooh, that is a big question. You know what? I can easily say that one of my biggest life lessons within this past year with hospice is there is no gift too big or too small.
Yeah.
We have these huge numbers or goals for fundraising, or we say, you need to, when you volunteer, it's X amount of time or whatever. But as I mentioned with that past story, it took 2 hours of holding somebody's hand to make them feel comfortable for them to die, to pass. And how powerful that moment was for the individual, for the volunteer, for the nurses, for the family. It just shows that, in humanity, it really is those simple things. And yeah, it's just, I don't even know if that's wisdom. I don't know, but
it's totally
so powerful.
wisdom.
It's so powerful. And I'm just so happy to have that knowledge.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that knowledge with us, because, I agree with you. There's nothing more powerful at all than being present with somebody in the moment that they're in, whether or not it's through palliative, whether or not it's through the grieving process, whether or not it's actually in the moment of death, however we can be present.
Yeah.
And with our families, life is short. We've learned that very, very truly, especially in this last while. Life is short. And so the gift of your time means everything. So, all right, everybody, I'm telling you, you got to reach out to hospice. They're going to be at the mall. There's 2 malls they're going to be at. You can go and see them there for sure. Northtown Center, as well as Westwood. It's Westwood Mall, right? Is that the name of the bar?
Wood Grove. You're thinking of
I always call it Westside. It's my old Coquitlam days, and for heaven's sake.
Oh,
anyway, yeah. Here we go. Again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. That does it for this episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. We're really, really, really glad you tuned in, and we look forward to talking with you next week. So stay tuned for our next program and for some other fabulous shows right here on CHLY 101.7 FM.